Corinthian. Hey, folks. So today we are talking about the second half of chapter 17. That's XVII, and it has to do with how Sparta is going to kind of control Greece. Well, they are, and then they're going to lose out in much of their power, and they're going to become a shadow of their former selves. And the terms we have on the board are the battle in Persia, the escape, the Corinthian War, Sparta's treatment of the Greeks, and Pelopidas and Epaminondas. So I'm giving the folks here in class a minute to talk about it, and we're going to begin. All right, that does it with time. Here, folks, let me go ahead and show you the images I have for today. So yeah, I mean, this story, Xenophon, he's going to write kind of like an autobiography of his life in these events. And like I mentioned, it's called the Anabasis. Remember, Xenophon, he was actually a trained philosopher. He went along with the army because he was essentially hoping to make it rich. He wasn't like a lead officer, though he was a man of noble birth. Because in Athens, not quite the same as in like medieval times, they did have nobility. Hey guys, can y'all sit up for me? Timothy, Jade. Hey Jade, can you sit up for me? No, don't kick him. Okay, I'll get him up. So, you gotta practice. So. You sit up for me? Thanks. No. Like up, like off. Thanks. All right. So yeah, he's going to like write the book called Anabasis about this. And so the Greeks knew a great deal about Asia Minor up over here on the coast. This is where you had the Ionian cities. But going deep inland over here, this was a big mystery to them. They didn't know anything about Mesopotamia, the land between the Tigris and Euphrates. Though Greeks had visited there, they didn't give long accounts about how this worked out. There weren't a lot of books back then, and of course, there was none of those internets and stuff like that. So their trip is going to start here in Asia Minor, the city of Sardis. They're going to go along, and as the Greeks go along, they're going to take account of what Persia is like. They're going to notice that it is an extremely multicultural empire, which means it's very diverse, but it's not unified. One region could care less about another. They're going to also notice that there are very good roads that lead it right to the center of the empire. You can't get lost. As long as you follow the roads, you're going to make it to the capital. So they notice that as well. And they're going to report this back to the Greeks. Another thing is they're going to notice that many of the people, they're not like the free people of Greece. They're not educated. They're basically enslaved. So it's just kind of like it's barely stitched together by the head of a strong, all-powerful king. Yeah.
So where was it what was better to live in, ancient Greece or Persia?
It depends on who you are. It depends on what class of person you are. It's the same as anywhere in the world, really. If you're born like most people, the poor class, probably not so well either way, really.
Yeah.
Because you can find yourself a slave. I would think, in my opinion, I would rather live in Greece because you're more likely to be free. And that's like my idea of quality of life. It isn't about creature comforts, it's about personal freedom. So I think probably be better to be a Greek. That and like Persians had high culture, but it was like a lot of their culture was only for like the super rich. And so like for the Greeks, it could be spread around more. People could enjoy more entertainment and stuff like that, right? So probably the Greeks. It's good. Like in ancient times, though, it was hard for everybody compared to us. Like the poorest people in America today live better than the best kings did back then. You know, so look at like air conditioning and like chicken tenders and stuff like that. All right. So if you remember, they make it all the way in the heart of Babylon. The king, the wannabe King Cyrus, he spills the beans. He tells them, "Hey, I got a trick to get here, but if you fight for me, you'll be super duper rich." And so there's going to be a battle. The Greeks are essentially going to help win this battle, but their boss, King Cyrus, dies. And so are almost all their generals. So you're going to have 10,000 Greeks there. The king of the Persian Empire is going to say, these guys are really hard to fight. I'm just going to let them wander off and starve. So they panic. Nobody wants to take charge. Xenophon says, all right, guys, come on, let's get together and let's just pick a direction and try to walk back home. If we can get to the ocean, we'll find people who can at least get us back to Greece. And so they have this long march. They're going through the deserts, and they're following the rivers here. I think that's the Tigris, all the way up. So they go through desert region, then they go through mountains. And up over here, the mountains can get very cold, so they're like tracked through snow. And then they finally make it up to the ocean, and they're all happy and weeping. And then they can catch boats all the way back to Byzantium and back to Greece. You're going to set up a victory mound just like at Marathon because they're going to be so happy about this. We're going to find that Alexander the Great is going to have a similar march whenever he tries to make it back home from India. So yeah, it's just like a story of survival, like an entire army starving and moving, fighting. A lot of the people around here, they're different backgrounds. Some of them were ruled by, even though they're all part of Persia, they had their own satraps who acted like their own kingdoms. And some of them would attack the army, some of them would let them pass peacefully. And the other Greeks are going to be fascinated by this story. So this is the Spartan king we were talking about, or general. What's his name? Agaslas. And he's going to be very definitive as far as Sparta joining forces with Persia. And in fact, especially after the Corinthian War, Sparta is going to become the sworn defender of Persia. So the Spartans are going to go from being the champions against Persians taking over Greece, is instead going to give Greek cities to Persia and threaten to attack anyone who tries to free them. So it's going to be a total reversal. We're going to see that Spartans are now, they cast away their old ways of living lives of hardship and lack of wealth, and they're going to start accepting gold and lives of luxury in exchange for being mercenaries. The cities that used to be against them, they will install more oligarchy, tyrannical governments. Accept bribes from cities, going to be totally corrupt, shadow of its former self. In the Corinthian War, you're pretty much going to have most of the major Greek city-states face against Sparta. But thanks to Persian wealth, they're going to be able to make a great big fleet. They're going to have Persian aid, and they're going to win this war. And that's how they're going to get, once again, to remain in charge of Greece. Of course, here you have the flute player. The reason that you have flute players are like in the Civil War, you had like drummer boys. It's to keep the troops in step, but also it's a way to issue commands. It has to be very loud, louder than the shouts of men, because the noise of battle kind of drowns that out. So you need a way for this to happen. Even all the way into the Korean and the Vietnam War. Chinese and the Viet Cong would use bugles in order to have different like musical notes to let the soldiers whether know to attack, retreat, and do other things. So yeah, using loud instruments is something that's been around for a long time to give soldiers commands over what's called the din of battle, the noise of fighting. This is Pelopidas, so he's going to be known as a great. He's going to be known as a great liberator of Thebes, and him and his friend Epaminondas are going to not only free Thebes, but we're going to see later they're going to go down and they're going to start freeing other Greek city-states. In fact, they're going to be the people who are going to free the Helots, who had been enslaved by the Spartans for hundreds of years. They're actually going to fight for and gain their freedom for them. So, there'll be some good guys in there. This is the battle that we were reading about where the Thebians, the Battle of Leuctra, and here in this battle, the Thebians are going to do something completely different. Whereas you've had the hoplites, the Greek hoplites, fight in a specific way for a long time, and the Spartans mastered it. Well, what these guys do, the Thebes, they're going to get innovative. They're going to start stacking their lines in a different formation, and they know that if they take down the Spartan king, the Spartans, by honor, will do anything to get their king's body back, even throw away their own lives. And because of that, once they take down their king, the Spartans are going to throw themselves to try to get his body, and you're going to have a smaller Theban, less well-trained army, but because of their superior leadership, is going to wipe out the larger, better-trained Spartan army. And so it's going to be one of those things that shows innovation and leadership can be everything, even in battle. The Thebians are going to make other innovations as well. They're going to help develop the phalanx that's going to be used so famously by Alexander the Great later too, or at least they're going to start developing it. Here you see battle plan. So here the red is the Spartans, and you see the right-hand side for the Greeks was always seen as the place of honor. And of course, the king would want to be in the place of honor. So with their smaller forces, they went ahead and had a very small stack of soldiers on this side. And they put almost all of their men just to crush the king. And once they crushed the king and his band of troops, they flank behind here, and they're able to push through and wipe out the others while these guys are doing their best to hold on. This is the cavalry. Here we see that they're going to manage to get behind the Spartan line and run off the Spartan cavalry and make it to their camp. And so, yeah, this is going to be a humiliating defeat for the Spartans. They're not going to be able to recover. We're going to see that when we come back tomorrow, we're going to see that Thebes is going to come back, and they're actually going to attack Sparta, and that's when they also free the Helots, and they're going to totally change the history of Greece. So, it's kind of a longer section today.
Yeah.
The battle in Persia. So yeah, there's like a lot of different things that are happening here. But like sometimes we'll have a chapter where it's just like one long big thing. But today we had a section that had a lot of things. So what happens when the Greeks are fighting in Persia?
Get lost.
They get lost, but after what?
After all the commanders die.
Yeah. So in the battle, I think it's Kunuxa. Might have misspelled it. Hey, Jen, I'm getting nuts. In the battle of Kunuxa, the Greeks won, but Cyrus and their generals died. And this is something that Alexander the Great is going to learn from, because we're going to see Alexander the Great is going to be like, hey, look, the Greeks fell apart when their generals died. The Spartans fell apart when their king died. So what Alexander the Great's going to do is he's going to make sure that the men under him, if a general or leader dies, can take his place. And the American military still does that today. A lot of Western militaries do that, where you're supposed to know the job of the next two people above you in case they're wiped out. So they can always have an administration. So yeah, so that kind of stinks. They lost their leadership. They don't know what to do. They kind of panic for a minute. So who's going to take charge?
Xenophon.
Yeah, Xenophon.
How do you pronounce his name?
Xenophon takes charge. And then you said they escaped. So what's that like?
Loki just wandered around until they saw the ocean.
Yeah, and then the Greeks. Wait, that should be okay. Not knowing where they were at, marched until they reached the sea. And so it said that they burned their baggage. What that means is like an army usually travels with like teams of horses or mules or oxen drawing wagons of supplies and also loot and stuff like that. Hey, Jaden, we're getting notes. Okay, go ahead and set up for me. I'm asking people to set up today, so go ahead and set up for me. So, yeah. So they're burning that. So they're like, hey, we got to get rid of this. This stuff's slowing us down. They pack up and carry on their shoulders and the horses they can take with them as much food and water and means of shelter and weapons as they can. Because they know they have to get out of there fast. Because they never know when the Persian king might bring his army to chase them down. They don't know if they're going to win that time. And so, yeah, they're starving. They're facing the elements. They're lost. They don't know where they are. It's a foreign land. Nobody can like speak to the locals. There's a diverse set of languages, and you can't have an interpreter for everybody. So it's a very, very dangerous time for them. But yeah, they managed to make it out.
Wouldn't it be funny if they hit the Caspian?
Well, yeah. See, that would have been a little bad because then they would have been there with the Scythians, who were not known for being very friendly. And
The what?
The Caspian Sea.
yeah, if they would have went like the other instead of going that way, if they went a little bit more like.
If they just accidentally went to like
You
Russia.
know-
Well, they knew they were east.
Well, that was
They
on
knew
the
they were
border.
east. Yeah.
Well, Persia had a
Okay,
border
so
on,
do they still have a
Mexico,
Persian
not
as
far from
barbarians or?
Today,
Not today, but do they still think of them as like barbarians?
they thought they were barbarians, but they didn't think of them as barbarians as they would say like the Celts or the Scythians or like that, because they knew that they had civilization, language, culture, religion. But they still thought that
They were less-
because of the way they lived, they were lesser, right? But they didn't.
They thought anyone who didn't live in the same city as them was
Yeah.
lesser.
And it was peculiar too, because like they didn't think of race the same way that people do now too, right? They thought it was interesting, but they thought of it more like a tribal way, not really a genetic way, I guess.
So you look like this because you're in the tribe, not because you're born of the tribe.
I did. Die. Oh, okay. Hey, so the Corinthian War. So what happens here? Who fights who?
The Spartans fight the Thebans. That's Theban. How do you say it?
Well, actually, Spartans fight not the Thebans. They actually fight Corinth.
I think they
And-
fought in Corinth.
Yeah, they're allies. And why were they all fighting? Anybody remember?
They didn't
kinda
like
hated
them.
everyone else.
Well, a lot of it had to do with because of Sparta's mistreatment. So remember,
Oh, they revolted.
yeah, so Sparta was going around installing these tyrannies. But who wins this one?
Sparta.
Yeah, Sparta won this one because of Persian aid. So the Spartans got massive amounts of cash. And remember, that was the Persians' idea now. They're like, man, we keep bringing these armies down there and it really stinks. Yeah.
Army escape, versus not knowing where they were.
Oh, yeah.
Where are they rare?
Yeah, you're right. So,
I didn't even notice.
yeah, what's funny is that I had it the other way and then I changed it. So the Persians were like, we will just pay and talk bad about the Greeks to make them want to fight each other. And it worked. The Greeks were totally falling for it, just tearing each other apart. But unfortunately for Persia, eventually it's going to get the Greeks fed up enough with them to join Alexander later. So, Sparta's treatment. So once again, we see that Sparta is in charge. And so what do they start doing again to the Greek city-states?
Just capturing everyone they didn't like.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so began to capture, like they're going to do this, cities such as Thebes.
They pretty much just started abusing their power, then people came and
They
Right.
did. They did. And they're going to give Ionia,
To the Persians.
yeah. They're like, hey, we know that we had these big wars over this, but you know what? We like that money. So they're definitely not ennobled. And they're also going to go beyond it. They're going to defend Persia from other Greeks. They're like, hey, back off. Yeah, Epaminondas.
Epaminondas.
Yeah, Peloponnes and Epaminondas. That is not an English-friendly word. Okay, so where were these guys from? From what?
Oh, they were Thebes, right?
Yeah. So they were two men who wanted to free Thebes. So
They
these are,
dressed up like women.
yeah, from Sparta, yeah. So snuck in the middle of a winter night.
So they snuck into like the council.
It's like that scene.
Like they snuck into like.
Okay, yeah.
They snuck into.
to be fair, they did dress up as women when they went to the theater, so they had practice.
I love.
Yeah, that's what
I love how they didn't notice like their armor is probably like poking out.
Yeah, it must have been really, really cold. Like, oh yeah, it's got extra
Like
jackets.
yeah.
All right, as women. And yes,
they snuck into like where were they at? What was the thing?
they went to I'm gonna phrase this to the I don't know, just call it like
Wait, it was
The
an
Spartan,
army,
like a
right?
Spartan meeting.
yeah, well they brought in many
It was
men
like a
with them, but
Spartan
it wasn't like a giant army. Yeah, so it was like we're gonna say like the pro-Spartan government.
But it was an army. Imagine just an army of women showing. That's kind of suspicious. Just arriving out of the cold in the woods.
Well, there's only a few of them. There wasn't.
Yeah, I think it was I don't think it was like a great big army that went in. Yeah, it's probably a small crowd at least. And what did they do when they found the pro-Spartan government?
Killed all their leaders.
Yeah, and executed them. So they free And now that, and Sparta is going to be very upset about this. So what's Sparta going to do?
And then they freed him from jail. Right?
But then Sparta's going to send its army, remember? So Sparta sent its army. But Thebes defeated them with their new innovative tactics. And this is going to totally crush Sparta. Yeah, back at home, they're weeping. And then eventually, the family members of those who lost soldiers will never say those soldiers' names again. They're going to pretend like it didn't happen. It's going to be so traumatic. They're just going to be like, oh, no, it didn't happen. And so,
Super mature.
well, I don't think they could handle it. It was against their, they're such a proud people. It went against like everything in their psyche. So yeah, here we have the start of the end of Sparta as an empire. From then on out, it's just going to be a small little city that no one cares about anymore. After we're going to see this battle, it's going to start the Battle of Electra, and so. Yeah, so then Thebes is going to rally around Pelopidas and Epaminondas. They're going to invade Peloponnesian Peninsula, free the Helots. We'll see tomorrow. Sparta will never be able to get back on its feet again. But Thebes will not remain in power for long because Macedonia is going to come along. And really and truly, these two patriots here, Pelopidas and Epaminondas, when they're gone, Thebes is going to kind of fall apart like the other cities. You see so many of these polis that they're only really doing well when they got that strong person leading them. And then once that strong person's gone, they kind of fall apart again. But let me see here. Just as a reminder, I'd like to remind you about the quiz on Thursday. So let me see what chapters it was again, or it will be.
You didn't think start from 13.
Well, I'll have to look at it because I have like the worst memory.
Friday's an A-Day, right?
Friday is, yes, sir.
Thank you. Right.
All right, yeah. Yeah, it's 15 and 16. It's just 18 terms. And after those 18 terms, we'll do a little something else. I'm not going to have you write a paper or anything like that, but we'll do a little something else. Yes, ma'am, 15 and 16. So that's XV and XVI, 18 little terms here. It's not this chapter. I don't like doing it over the chapters we just gone over.
Appreciate it.
Make sure you study. Good stuff. Good stuff. We take care of each other. All right, folks. So we're going to come back and we're going to discuss the next little chapter tomorrow and the power of Thebes. All right. Talk to you later, kids.
Once you're done putting the stuff up,